You're listening to the Greeks Gridiron, live with Ethan Hristodoulou.
What's up, everyone, and welcome back to more of the Greeks Gridiron. I'm Ethan Hristodoulou, and today we are talking the MVP race for 2022. Since we are now 6 weeks in after kickoff yesterday for the NFL season, I figured this would be a good time to start doing these videos. We'll probably do one of these every 3 or 4 weeks or so, and just kind of see how the race has changed, go over some of the reasoning for why I have people placed where they are, and kind of give some honorable mentions, and just break it down player by player. So we're doing a list of 5 here. So these are the top 5 candidates that I have here in the order that I like them best. And for my honorable mentions this week, I did have 2 people in mind, Justin Jefferson being one of them. He has been an absolute beast of a receiver so far this season, so he did get serious consideration to at least drop into the number 5 spot of this list. And I also want to shout out Raiders edge rusher Maxx Crosby. He has been an absolute force coming off the edge for the Las Vegas Raiders, and I cannot make this list without at least honorably mentioning him as a guy that I seriously consider to have on here. He has just been, I think, leaps and bounds better than what anyone really expected of him since coming into the league. He has earned every penny that he's gotten so far, and he has been an absolute force. But with those 2 guys out of the way, let's break down the 5 guys that I have currently leading the race here, giving my reasoning for why I have them ordered the way they are, starting with number 5, and it's going to be a quarterback, and this list is going to be QB heavy because, MVP award seems to be the quarterback award these days. Lamar Jackson from the Baltimore Ravens. Now, I actually had him a little bit higher when I was kind of just planning out the list roughly in my head, but once I started doing some digging and looking at some stuff, I settled with him at number 5, and if this was 2 weeks ago, I'd probably have him a little bit higher, but in terms of just passing, his performance has dipped a little bit the last couple of weeks, going up against some solid defenses here, but overall, he's having a really good season here, and he's hard to argue against, but rating sitting at 97.9. His completion percentage is the lowest amongst the quarterbacks on this list at 63.8%, with an adjusted completion percentage of 75.6. And if you don't know what that means, it's essentially just accounting for wide receiver drops and what his completion percentage would have been should those drops have been caught. He is also the only quarterback on this list with a game-winning drive and a fourth quarter comeback, so I do have to give him credit for that. His team has been put into positions where they've needed to come from behind and get that victory, and he has done so there. And while he is the only one with those 2 numbers there, again, some of the passing numbers, the turnovers are another issue for me as well. He does have 5 interceptions and a fumble as well. So there is a few things here and there that just kind of sway me away from having him higher up on this list or fighting for that 3 or 2 spot. But I do really like Lamar Jackson. I think he's putting together one of his best seasons so far, but the guys ahead of him are just edging him out slightly. Now, coming in at the number 4 spot here, and I anticipated him to actually be a little bit lower on this list, but he has just been having such an awesome year, and amongst all the quarterbacks on this list, he has actually been the most accurate when you look at the adjusted completion percentage number, and that is going to be quarterback of the Eagles, Jalen Hurts. His rating is currently sitting at 97.4. And his completion percentage right now, highest amongst all the quarterbacks, 67.9. And he is actually the biggest victim of drops from all 4 of these quarterbacks. With drops accounted for, his completion percentage would be sitting at 80.6%, which is a ridiculous number to put into perspective. He does have a game-winning drive. His completion percentage in terms of air yards is sitting at a respectable 5.8. So he is averaging a fairly high number in terms of air yards completed. When you think of quarterbacks and just them taking those big shots and taking big plays, while it might not be the highest on this list, it is the 3rd out of 4 on this list here. It is amongst some of the tops in the league. So he's taking those big and risky type of throws, I guess you could say. He's able to get the ball in the end zone through the air. He has 4 passing touchdowns, which is the lowest on this list, and that's why I don't have him higher here. I wish while I understand the evolution of quarterbacks this day and age, I have Lamar Jackson on this list. I have Jalen Hurts on this list. I do enjoy the rushing aspect that quarterbacks are bringing to the table these days. I just wish he was getting it done a little bit more with his arm, because I do still have a great deal of respect and appreciation for just the passing game of the quarterback position. So I would like to see him with a few more passing touchdowns, but he does lead the list with 6 rushing touchdowns. So he has 10 altogether, a respectable 272 passing yards a game, and a very good 53 rushing yards yards a game as well. He only has 4 turnovers altogether, and he has a game-winning drive. I really like what Jalen Hurts is doing this year, and I've talked about it during power rankings and in game previews and things like that. He has definitely taken one of the more significant third-year leaps of some quarterbacks in recent memory. He is really starting to look like the guy for Philadelphia, and I'll be honest, I wasn't super high on him last year, but seeing the development and progression he's had so far this year, especially those first 3 games of the season, he was really hucking the football around, and I would love to see the Eagles go back to more of that because I feel like the last 2 weeks they focused a little bit more heavily on rushing. I really like the progression of Jalen Hurts, and he's putting on one hell of a season for the Eagles right now. Now, coming in at the number 3 spot, and some of you Eagles fans might hate me for this one here, but I have to go with Cowboys linebacking, edge rushing, whatever you want to call him, Micah Parsons. This guy has been an absolute game wrecker and is a huge reason, in my opinion, for why the Cowboys are even sniffing playoffs right now and are sitting at a dominant 4-1 amongst the NFC and at a very surprising position right now considering they're missing their quarterback. He has just been an absolute beast. And when you look at his numbers, it's clear that the Cowboys are using him a little bit more as an edge rusher. I think that when you see what he does when it comes to chasing down the quarterback, he is just so skilled and it comes so natural to him. And he's so fluid with some of the moves he does. It's not really surprising that after what was it? I believe he had 16 sacks last year, 14 sacks. I forget the number off the top of my head, but after seeing the way he was able to chase down the QB last season, for him to be able to now be put more in a true rushing role while still dropping into coverage and playing inside the box from time to time, he's still being successful. And honestly, he's even more successful than he was last year. He's already sitting at 6 sacks on the season, and the number was 13 that he had last year. So he's already almost halfway to what he had last year, and we're not even at the midpoint of the season. He has 16 pressures on the year, 19 total tackles from where he's been playing, whether that's on the defensive line or inside the box. He's got 7 tackles for loss. And the biggest and most impressive thing for me this year is his missed tackle percentage. When it comes to making those tackles and bringing the carrier down, whoever it is, a receiver, a running back, quarterback, whatever it may be, he chopped his missed tackle percentage in half from last season so far. He was at 10.6 last year, but he's sitting at only a 5% missed tackle rate, which means odds are he's making the stop, he's making the tackle, whether it's for a loss, whether it's just a completion and no gain, maybe you're chasing somebody down, whatever it may be. Micah Parsons has been so consistent and so dominant for the Cowboys. I had a really hard time putting him anything lower than number 3. I did consider him at one point at number 4 when I was breaking down this list, but just looking at some of his game tape and looking at the numbers, I mean, you cannot really deny right now that Micah Parsons has just exploded onto the league after his first year and truly developed into a game-breaking and game-deciding player in this league. And I just have a hard time arguing him not being in this list and even being outside the top 3 with just how dominant he is. And again, he plays on the D-line. He plays in the box. He's not like your traditional linebacker. He's so versatile in what he does. He can play inside, outside, whatever you need him to do, he can do it. And it's crazy how well he excels in every position he gets put in. It's not like you're putting him there because he needs to be. You're putting him there because he can be there. And that's what makes him such a dominant force. And again, my 3rd best pick for MVP so far this season. Going back to quarterbacks, though, because again, this is a QB-driven league and a QB-driven award at this point, and I'll be honest, I'm not a fan of it, but it is what it is. And I initially had him at the top of my list, but again, going back, looking at tape, looking at the numbers, and just really breaking everything down, I slipped him into the number 2 spot. I really wanted to have him at number 1, but Patrick Mahomes, Kansas City quarterback, he has been phenomenal this season. Absolutely phenomenal. 110.5 quarterback rating. His completion percentage is sitting at 66.7 with an adjusted at 77.6. He is the only quarterback right now so far that does not have a game-winning drive or fourth quarter comeback amongst the people that are on this list here. Surprisingly enough, but just KC has been so good so far, and they're typically in the right spot towards the end of games that it's teams trying to catch up with them. I'm just surprised that he didn't have at least one of these. He's averaging about 280 passing yards a game. He has 15 total passing touchdowns, only to 2 interceptions here, well below where he was at this point last season. He's averaging about 5.3 air yards per completion here, which is the lowest on the list. He does not really have to make any of those massive risky throws like he has been in the past because he has receivers that are honestly doing a good job getting open underneath and making things happen, which is definitely a little bit different from what we're used to seeing from the Kansas City Chiefs. Obviously, taking away Tyreek Hill has adjusted the way their offense looks, but a lot of these receivers have been doing an excellent job in terms of just making the catch and making plays happen. But Mahomes has been efficient. He's been decisive, and he's not, no real turnovers, no real issues with controlling and protecting the football. He has been the guy that he's been for the last, whatever it is, 4 or 5 years now that he's been in the league, as consistent as ever, and he's doing an excellent job leading the Chiefs right now. And I'd be hard-pressed to say that this team probably isn't going to end up winning the AFC West come the end of the season, with just how good he has this team looking and some of the uncertainty going on with the rest of that division after everyone was really considering it to be the best division in football coming into this year. But Mahomes has been as consistent as always, and for him to not be in the top 2 conversation, I just think would be rather silly at this point, considering the way the MVP award goes. And then at the number 1 spot, you just can't really deny the way he's been playing, and some of the numbers really speak for themselves. And if you've watched the way the Bills have played this year, Josh Allen has just been an absolute menace to defenses. And you can argue some of the teams that they've played, you got to take advantage of a really bad Steelers team this past week. But, I mean, just the bulk of the bulk numbers that he has put together so far this season, you're looking at 107.4 quarterback rating. His adjusted completion percentage is at 78.3. It's almost like 12% higher than what his actual completion percentage is. He has dealt with some drops from some of his receivers. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, because I was looking at these numbers the other day, and I didn't write it down for this, but I want to say he has the second most drops from his receivers this year. I think Trevor Lawrence is the guy that's right in front of him, and then he's sitting at number 2. Which is crazy considering how good the Bills have been and just how efficient the offense has been in getting into the red zone and scoring and what have you. And they're still one of the highest they're the highest scoring team in the league right now, or second. I think it's like second. It might be second, but it's still ridiculous, the output and the numbers he has despite that. He's averaging 333 passing yards a game. He has the 14 touchdowns, the 2 rushing touchdowns. He does have the 4 interceptions, which is a little bit problematic, and he has 4 fumbles as well altogether. But the biggest deciding factor, that wow factor, that big arm strength that everyone talks about with him, he is averaging 7 air yards per completion. That's the highest on this list here, and it's highest by a mile here. I think the next closest on this list here is 6.3, so he's averaging almost an entire yard ahead of the next closest guy, and that's Lamar Jackson, who has the 6.3 number there. But he also has the 45 rushing yards a game on the ground, and he can eat a defense alive, whether it's with his legs, whether it's with his arm. He is the heart and soul of that offense over there in Buffalo. This is a team that I would love to see rely a little bit more on their running game, just to take some of the weight off of Josh Allen's shoulders, because it really feels like this team lives and dies off of Josh Allen's play. But he's just so good at what he does, and he has evolved into such an amazing quarterback after being the guy that was, he had all the physical tools and all the raw talent, but he just didn't have the accuracy, and he's managed to rein all of that in and become so good at what he does. If he's not your odds-on favorite for the MVP race right now, I'd really love to know who it is. If it's Patrick Mahomes, all right, sure, but if it's anyone else besides these 2 guys, I mean, even the betting odds favor Josh Allen to win the award right now. I'm hard-pressed to believe that the Bills don't end up being the number 1 seed in the league, at worst maybe number 2, for the AFC, and then Josh Allen being one of the guys that's in that, by the end of the season in the running for that MVP race. He has just been playing at an absolute ludicrous pace right now, and I don't really see it slowing down. I don't anticipate it slowing down, and I have a feeling he's got a slight edge over Patrick Mahomes. I think this is Josh Allen's year, at least for the MVP award. Maybe, Super Bowl, it's a different conversation, but when it comes to the MVP race, I feel like Josh Allen is the guy. But those are my 5 leaders in the MVP race. I want to hear what you guys think in the comments section down below. Let me know what you guys think. What am I getting right? What am I getting wrong? All that good stuff. Would love to hear what you guys have to say. But that's it for me. I'll see you guys next time. Have a good one.